right, moving on to the third paper in this session, which is titled Work-Related Use and Positive Livelihood Outcomes Among Mobile Phone Users in Asia, and it will be presented by Komathi Ale.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Komathi Ale from the University of Southern California, a doctoral candidate there. First of all, welcome to NTU. I think it's a bit 2 days of delay, but I hope you're enjoying my hometown. You get to see Singapore beyond the confines of NTU and Nanyang Executive Center and all that stuff. But so my research is mainly on ICTs in education. That's what I've been interested in. That's where I'm pursuing my dissertation research in. And I got into mobiles actually through mHealth and in South LA and mHealth in Asia in general. But this is gonna be my first attempt at mobiles in livelihoods. So I'm looking at work-related use and positive livelihood-related outcomes. So what the study set out to do is to investigate the effects of psychological mechanisms in using mobile phones for work-related communications. And subsequently, what I'm trying to do is to prove that work-related communication helps people at the bottom of the pyramid, who use this phone strategically to reap livelihood-related outcomes. The study runs a series of regression to predict hypotheses, and which is guided by the theory of reasoned action and the technology acceptance model. I'm going to argue that the focus needs to shift from a generic mobiles usage to strategic work-related communication activities. This shift not only helps us in understanding the current practices, but also illuminate what is how policymakers and practitioners can be informed in certain development initiatives that are targeting people in the bottom of the pyramid. So the availability and increased access to information has transformed society in many ways. And especially in the development of ICTs, particularly mobile phones, has led to new ways in which people communicate and connect with each other. So be it in networks, that involve, be it the social networks, the business networks, or information networks. In other words, so today's global economy is to a large extent fueled by an increasing flow of information that people gather from various sources. So particularly in conversations in international development, the area of livelihoods research has recently experienced increased attention, again because of the exponential growth of mobiles in developing countries. But while there are differing opinions as to adoption, practicality, sustainability of mobiles in resource-constrained regions, there is consensus that the critical role in development is demonstrated by certain communities' ability to use mobiles for work-related communication, or strategic communication as I frame it. So while factors affecting mobile adoption is widely researched, there is limited research that has been conducted to prove the relationship between individual-level psychological mechanisms and usage of mobiles and the resultant benefits that is reaped, particularly within the lens of strategic work-related communication. So in the realm of livelihoods research, strategic communication essentially refers to the use of mobiles for financial, for business, for work-related communications that allow users to be more productive and make it easier for them to get the work done. So something as easy as making a phone call to a store or supplier that's 50 kilometers away from a rural location could help increase the productivity or how efficiently people go about conducting their businesses or their work. I'm basing this on two theories, the theory of reasoned action and the technology acceptance model. So the research, so theory of reasoned action talks about user behavior in terms of adoption, basing it on attitudes and norms. And I think as many of you here might be familiar with, the technology acceptance model also looks at behavioral intention and how it's influenced by cognitive assessments. So I'm not going to read out the hypotheses to you. I hope you just take a few minutes to look at the hypotheses. But I'm just going to go through what are the variables that I'm looking at. First, perceived usefulness is the degree to which individuals believe that that mobile phones will help them increase their job performance. So in other words, there are studies that have suggested that perceived usefulness in mobiles helps, in particular, consumers with irregular incomes and limited savings, and in ways in which they search for or connect with possible work opportunities. Perceived ease of use is a degree to which individuals believe that using a particular system would be free of efforts, and it is the user's perception of how easy it is to use mobiles for conducting work-related communication. So in a sense, a perception that something is relatively effortless to operate might mean it is more likely to be adopted. Self-efficacy is a variable that I'm much interested in. I even look at it from the education perspective, is one's belief that his or her capability to organize and execute a particular action, and it predicts the use of technology to accomplish a task in helping individuals determine what actions to take, how much effort to invest, and how long to persevere, or what strategies to use. And social influence. It's the degree to which individuals perceive that important others, significant others, believe he or she should use a new system. So it is also acknowledged that social norms need to be conceptualized in a more distinguishing manner to capture the nuances in a social environment. But however, mobile phones in developing countries are used mainly for reaching out to personal contacts than for business-related purposes. And, but beyond the availability of resources, perceived monetary value also depends on whether the value obtained is proportionate to the cost incurred. And in other words, one may perceive costs to be slightly higher than expected, yet choose to use a service if it offers value to them, or vice versa. So perceived monetary value is the degree to which individuals perceive the appropriateness of the costs in relation to one's perceived benefits or preference of a service. One thing I'm interested in looking at is also gender. And here, women, in this case, in this particular, in mobiles and livelihoods, women might not be given sufficient or equal opportunities to explore strategic communication. I argue that in developing world contexts where gender discrimination and inequality continue to be barriers in ICT adoption, a negative relationship can be hypothesized. More specifically, this relationship may also be perpetuated by the occupation type in terms of whether or not one's job requires mobile use. And the second main DV that I'm looking at is the livelihood-related positive outcomes. So regarding the tangible and intangible benefits of technology use, diffusion theory suggests the concept of relative advantage, in which it captures the possible instrumental benefits that could include information, economic, social realms of mobile phone. It also focuses on the expansion of one's resources, regardless of the types of activities that they are engaged in. However, there is a paucity of scientific evidence that work-related phone usage is related to livelihood related outcomes, and I was trying to explore to see if there is a positive relationship between these. The work that I've done so far, I'm more used to going down to the field, collecting data by myself. So I mean, I know the stuff, I'm engaged in what I'm collecting. But in this case, I had the opportunity to work on a data set that was available from Learn Asia, so I would like to acknowledge Learn Asia for the data set they made available. It is a teleuse at bottom of the pyramid for survey that they conducted. So they do conduct a series of surveys in Asian countries. It has been, I think they have been conducting it since 2007-ish. So this was the fourth round of survey that was collected in 2011. And it comprised of over 9,000 respondents from Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka, and Thailand. And they use multi-stage stratified cluster sampling. So they have been rigorous in the data collection and sharing it as well. So these are surveys that were created in English and translated and administered in local languages. They're conducted face-to-face, and I think the interviewer administered surveys. The study focuses on mobile phone users. So for my study, the data itself, had covered both mobile phone users and non-users, but in this study, I focused only on mobile phone users, which came up to a sample of around 4,000. And as you can see, the mean age is around 33 years, and there was almost equal percentage of males and females in my sample. What I was trying to do is to get a more nuanced look at, what are the factors or what are the what are the factors that I could control for that could influence whether or not people use their phones for strategic work-related communication. So, I'm just going to quickly run through this. There were 2 types of regression tests that were conducted. And as you can see, this is, it's a little small, but I just wanted to highlight that the alphas, the Chrome-based alpha, were all acceptable, pretty high, over 0.7. And these were the items for the various variables that we're looking at. So I'm not going to torture you or myself with the charts here, but I'll go straight to the results. First of all, this figure illustrates that the significantly greater estimated livelihood-related positive outcomes of those who use mobile phones for work-related communication compared to those who do not. So, as for the results, so the first 6 hypotheses predicted that work-related use of mobiles is positively related to psychological mechanisms such as self-efficacy, perceived use, and so on. What I found is that rural dwellers are 28% less likely to use mobile phones for work-related communication than urban counterparts. For those unemployed, the odds of using mobiles goes down by 43% compared to those employed. There is, again, just on the onset, there is scope there to look at why is there this disparity, of such large numbers. The social influence significantly decreases the odds of strategic use of phones by almost 20%. The likelihood of positive relationship between perceived usefulness and strategic use goes up by 64% among people with irregular incomes. And the likelihood of a positive relationship between gender and strategic use goes down by 58% among females who use their phones for work-related, or whose occupations require them to use mobiles. So that's how I kind of tried to create a more nuanced look at occupations or income and in the study. So I also found that the effects of mobiles on work-related communication, for work-related communication on livelihood-related outcomes was significant among bottom-up pyramid respondents, and together the variables explain about 23% of variance in livelihood-related outcomes. In the contrary to literature explaining the positive effects of psychological mechanisms on ICTs, I found that self-efficacy and perceived ease of use did not predict strategic use, and there were findings related to gender and related to what kind of occupation or whether or not the occupation required the use of mobile phones. There were different interesting findings that came out of this study. Theoretically, again, probably because this study used self-efficacy measures as its established, there might be, I suggest a need for more nuanced self-efficacy concepts. So building a mobile self-efficacy measure, particularly mobile phones. So what are the self-efficacy concepts that you could particularly look among that is of relevance to this context? And we're talking about relevance of knowledge and usage of outcomes. So looking at mobile literacy and knowledge on outcomes. So basically focusing on mobiles and the restraints and the possibilities of mobile usage as opposed to a larger psychological variable that is generally used. On the practical note, what I'm more passionate about from this study was that campaigns could focus on empowering women with customized information on using their phone for strategic communication use. So it could be by occupation type or settings, rural or urban settings. And it could look at ways to further empower bottom of the pyramid audiences with irregular income to facilitate long-term income stability. There are a list of recommendations for future research, but I would end right now because that's the time I have. So again, I would like to thank Learn Asia for the data set they've made available, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
We have time for a few questions.
Hello. The models and the theories that you use, the TAM and DRA, well, they were designed long before they were mobile phones. Mm-hmm. Why didn't you consider modifying some of the theories to take into account some of the unique affordances that are provided by mobile phones today, like apps and other things?
Again, one of the limitations that I did have was what variables that I could work with given the data sets that I had. And the data collected were in line with models, with variables that are highlighted generally in the two theories that I was talking about. But definitely, there is this a scope for future research.
Very interesting talk. I wonder whether you've separated the data sets by gender, because it strikes me you've got that category social influence, mm-hmm. and yet from what we've been hearing over the past day, the social pressures and expectations on women and men are quite different. And it just seems that there may be, more in that data that you can bring out.
I agree. So I did separate, gender as a control variable or as a independent variable itself, but I did not look at gender within social influence. Oh no, I did not do that. Yes.
Just separate two data sets.
Got it.
Run the models again.
See what the
see whether actually the social influence variable comes out differently.
Got it.
In those two different data sets.
Got it. This study I did not look at the what are the findings within these 5 Asian countries. So that's also something that's worth exploring.
Hi. Over here.
Hi.
Thank you for the talk, very interesting.
Thank you.
I'm curious about the notion of self-efficacy in this context and how you see it as relating to sort of skill with or knowledge of the technologies in question. And is it a question of like how skilled people see themselves as? I mean, I realize that's what you're measuring in some ways, but what's the relationship of that in this context with sort of the actual concrete skills?
I think from self-efficacy, what I'm coming at is how confident people feel in being able to use their phones to perform these work-related activities. And according to the theories, I mean, because I'm looking at psychological mechanisms, so that's the reason why I'm looking at confidence or self-efficacy and how it relates to other perception or psychological perceptions. So that's where, you know, they come together, if that's got that right.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking of scenarios where people might be very confident but not actually very effective with using the tools, or they might be very confident and very effective.
What might be worth looking further is whether there's any information on skills or, you know, that be it the perceived perceptions on their own skill levels or some kind of a subjective assessment of people's skills and seeing if there is a relationship with that. But I do doubt that I did come across that in that particular data set.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you. No, but this is something that I am exploring in education studies, as I mentioned, like looking at self-efficacy and the learning outcomes. You know, so that's where some more objective learning outcomes and subjective assessment, students' assessments of their own self-efficacy in terms of computer usage. Yeah.
Other questions? Oh.
Thank you. Thanks for the talk. I think this might just be a clarification question, and I'm sorry if I missed it in your talk. But so when you say strategic use, what makes the use strategic? And are there non-strategic uses if I'm using the phone for work-related purposes?
What I meant by strategic use is the user's consciously using it to enhance or to better enable their work processes. So, and non-strategic use in this case would just be not using it for any work-related communications.
Using it for work-related communications is part of the definition. Yeah. Okay. Could you give us a few examples of the kinds of ways that people use mobile phones strategically for these kinds of work-related activities? So that's why
in this case, so work-related would be trying to contact, I think we did this one of the open sessions where trying to get information on prices for a produce, for example. So they, you know, how they probably via SMS or phones to markets or sources of information that could give farmers, for example, or producers market prices. So that's a work-related use. Or calling the suppliers, you know, for someone who's having a store or produce store in a rural context, calling suppliers who are at a significant distance and getting arrangements for stuff to be delivered or stuff, you know, to check whether supplies are available. So these are work-related how I define work-related communication, and none would be for social uses, you know, to contact friends or to keep connections that are outside the bound circle of business.
Can I ask a short follow-up to that? I think often in the parts of the world where I've done research in sub-Saharan Africa, it's really hard to draw the line between social and kind of strategic work activities. So if someone's calling kind of a possible customer to chat, does that count as strategic?
I mean, as I was answering here, I was just thinking, like you said, even the Chinese context, there's this Quanxi, where it's, correct me if I'm wrong, my Chinese dear friends, where you build work, you know, business connections based on your, the trust that you have or your personal connections. So there is an overlap, but I tried to keep it, I'm trying to draw out or tease out the differences, or keep it distinct by trying to control other variables. I mean, so there is certainly overlaps, and it also differs by cultures, like you see.
Additional questions? Josh, did you want to? Okay. Last chance. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.